So part of what we all have to do as we think about what change looks like is be bold in some way, shape, or form. Imagine if there was a really bold goal out there that every young person who left high school had a path, had a career path, had an educational path, had a way to get where they wanted to go. Our next speakers are going to talk about exactly that and how they're working together to help young people get the foundational skills they need to be successful in whatever future it is that they want to pursue and that they have a way to get there. Please help me welcome Blair Taylor, Chief Community Officer from Starbucks, Amy Kavanaugh, Foundation Chairman and Chief Public Affairs Officer from Taco Bell, and Daryl Brewster, Chief Executive Officer of CECP.
Thank you, Yvonne, and it is a pleasure to be here. I am Daryl Brewster with CECP, an organization that was founded by another great philanthropist, Paul Newman, the actor/salad dressing maker. And he, along with a number of leading CEOs 16 years ago, founded CECP with the belief that the world's leading companies, and we have a couple of those here with us today, really can and should be a force for good in society. And over the 16 years, CECP has now grown to well over 200 companies, and companies that are really looking to make a difference. And I think over the last few years, we're really seeing companies step up and moving from the days of, some had said, Andrew Carnegie's spare change, I've made some, I'll give a bit away, to really a sea change, where companies are really making an impact, not just when the dollars are done, but on a daily basis in terms of their business operations. And one of the great examples of this and a collaborative effort, it's really what's going on with the 100,000 opportunity movement that is really being led by the team here from the groups from Starbucks, as well as Taco Bell and some 30 other companies. And a great example of how we're inspiring next generation leaders through meaningful employment. So with me, we have Amy out of Taco Bell with really a great experience. And share, if you would, your family motto here with the group. I think that kind of sums up a great part of your background experience.
Wake up every day and make a difference. So what my 10 and 12-year-olds hear me screaming through the hallways every morning.
And Amy has a great background on the corporate side, worked with Edelman and with Starbucks through much of her career, and now leads efforts at Taco Bell. How many Taco Bell fans out there? Okay, great.
You can all go ahead and admit it.
Yeah, so we're going to go.
All right.
We're going to go from quesadillas to cappuccino. And Blair Taylor, Blair is a graduate of Amherst, the most difficult school to get into in the country, and has been both on the nonprofit as well as the for-profit side, and now at Starbucks. Maybe a little bit about your background and career on the nonprofit side as well.
Yeah, so first of all, pleasure to be here. I am now Chief Community Officer at Starbucks and President of our foundation at Starbucks. But I spent about 12 years of my life running nonprofits, ran the LA Urban League for many years, was Executive Vice President of an organization called College Summit, which is a college access initiative for low-income youth, and worked on that for 4 years. And then spent a little bit of time in local government in the city of Los Angeles. So I've had probably a little more than half of my career in the private sector side, and probably a little bit less than half, probably 40% of my time in the nonprofit and local government side.
Great. And no, you all met a number of years ago, is that right?
In fact, we met, I was working with Starbucks, having had the opportunity to work for Howard Schultz, who's one of, obviously the most well-known and impactful purpose or servant leaders and purpose-driven leaders. But we were exploring an opportunity to open a store where half the profits would go to the Urban League. We had the opportunity to meet Blair, and this is a man with a vision and making a difference. And come 10 years later, have an opportunity to be sitting next to him here.
It was interesting because that model, which is relevant for anybody who's in the nonprofit space, came about because of the notion of nonprofits really needing to figure out different ways of funding themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So the question we asked was, how could we create an annuity income stream that sort of got us beyond the ebbs and flows of philanthropic dollars or regular corporate donations or dollars to our organization. And so we set up a model where there was literally a community store embedded in South Los Angeles, and the company went on and opened several more of these, where that store shared half of its profits with the Los Angeles Urban League, and the Los Angeles Urban League in turn drove customers into that store. So it became a very profitable endeavor for both sides.
So great endeavor, a sustainable model for those. So, I mean, you guys are both with big corporations, but you sound like regular people. I mean, that's kind of cool.
Nah. That might be going too far.
So tell us a little bit about the thrust here, this 100,000 opportunity movement that you all are leading, along with another several dozen companies. What's that all about?
So the reality is there's about 5.5 million youth, opportunity youth. I think in the past we would have called them at-risk youth, but they're not at risk. There is an amazing amount of potential. They are neither in school nor do they have jobs. And in some instances, they don't even know where to begin to get it. And what we do know is that the biggest hindrance to getting a job is actually getting a first job. And going in and having access, meeting people, having someone encourage you and actually just give you basic skills, whether it's job interviewing skills, what to wear, what to say, how to smile. And it's really giving folks that first opportunity. So we've had two different forums at this point, Chicago and just recently Phoenix, and I think the results speak for themselves.
Phenomenal events, but just to build on Amy's point, 5.6 million disengaged youth. If you extrapolate that number globally, it's 300 million young people, 16 to 24, who are not working and not in school. This is arguably the biggest issue of our time. And I say that because there's no way you can take 6 million young people out of our U.S. economy and have them not working and not be in school for any period of time and not have that be a drag on every single company. And I think what the beauty of this is there's companies who are actually awakening and saying this is beyond charity. This isn't that's actually a good thing. I mean, I'm the president of our foundation, so I love charity. So don't misinterpret what I'm about to say. But the only way that the change will be sustainable is if it gets embedded into the engine of corporate America, which is our engine is hiring. Our engine is about people. And so what we're realizing is there's some fantastic talent out there that is in this pool that has been traditionally overlooked that now has an enormous potential to either uplift society or have a negative impact on our GDP over the long term. So companies are engaging in a different way. 35 companies now committed to hiring 100,000 of this disengaged youth population. And I'll say one other thing, which is people misunderstand this population. Even in corporate America, we're fighting, Amy and I are fighting the myths of this population because people think, oh, they don't want to work, they're not ready for work, they don't have any skills, and that's been the storyline for many years in corporate America. I would make the analogy with the veteran population 20 years ago, where people really thought veterans weren't employable, didn't have the skills that were necessary in the workplace, everybody had PTSD, right? All of those things were the way that the veteran population was branded. The reality of it is, you fast forward today, are there veterans who have PTSD and who need significant intervention? Absolutely. Are there also veterans who are ready for work, who are coming out of being a platoon leader, who have incredible skills to be a regional manager today? Absolutely. This opportunity youth population that we are going after is every bit as diverse, and I don't mean that ethnically, I mean that actually in terms of skills as the veterans population is. And what we are doing is we have a coalition of companies working with a coalition of nonprofits, including the Aspen Institute. They move young people through that continuum who need more significant intervention. We stand at the end like the catcher in the rye, catching those young people as they're ready to go into employment. And what Amy just referenced in Chicago, 4,000 young people showed up at our kickoff event. 800 of them got jobs. We just did another one in Phoenix. 2,000 young people showed up. 500 of them got jobs. These are it's great. These are I have to say this. These are better ratios of interview to hire than we have when we go out in the full population. So just to demystify the population.
So it's 5.6 million. So that would be the second largest city in America. That's right. The kind of numbers. And if they're not getting an opportunity to have jobs between 16 and 24, by 25, it's going to be getting harder and harder, right? This is going to be really hard for them to be part of the economy.
I think we talk a lot about purpose, right? Purpose is important. It's important for companies. It's important for individuals. That's a human truth. And when you don't give somebody purpose, somebody else will. And you look at what's going on in the world right now with youth and that disenfranchisement and the unengagement and not feeling heard, not having access to what you believe is rightfully yours, or being connected to a community that matters. That is the broader issue. There are financial issues, but that is, it's a scary proposition, and we actually owe it to our communities and to ourselves. It really truly is shared values. We, our CEO, Brian Nickel, is, his two strategies: live our purpose and love our food. Living our purpose is actually giving people opportunity, building communities, and truly we say live Moss, which is give more, get more, do more. Just do something that's important, and that for us is actually filling that pipeline, going into the communities where people need us. They're our customers. We can give jobs. We can give back. We have been working with teens and educating them and providing educational opportunities for all of our employees since 1992. This is really important in terms of a sustainable system, but also giving people a sense of purpose, meaning, belonging, and helping them move on to something else.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a commonality between the CEO of Taco Bell and the CEO of Starbucks, right, who literally both believe that you can do well and do good in corporate America, and frankly that is actually the sustainable model. That the sustainable model over time is when three different parties win. When the company wins because we are in fact getting great talent in this instance, when society wins because we're solving a social problem, and when the individuals who get those jobs are turned loose on a pathway of opportunity that they would not have otherwise had.
Yeah. And I mean, it almost shares some of the comments as we read from Andrew Carnegie, right? I mean, if it's a few people are going to end up with all the money and all the funds, it isn't going to be sustainable for long. That's right. So we're going to need to figure out ways, and if we can do that as part of our ongoing business enterprise, it's going to be all the more powerful. Now, you talk about these fairs, these job fairs you've had. Any great stories you can kind of share? People you've met that, who's coming to these? How are they responding and reacting? As we talked before, sounded like some really rich stories about very real people dealing with their challenges.
I will just say unbelievable stories. So two very quick examples. We ran a CEO roundtable in our Chicago event. Again, 4,000 young people showed up, CEO of Taco Bell, CEO of Starbucks, and each one of those CEOs sat down at a roundtable with 5 or 6 opportunity youth and heard their stories. And the idea with this was we wanted to demystify the population. We wanted the CEOs to see the latent talent in America, right? And the objective was, when they got up from those tables, we wanted them to say, I would hire any one of those young people I sat down with today. And that's pretty much what happened. Wow. The stories that came out were of young people who had overcome unimaginable things just to be sitting there, just to be there at that moment telling their stories, and had done so and had actually gone on, graduated from high school, and were doing some things, looking for their first break in many instances. And the CEO's recognition that we have incredible talent in this nation that we have not tapped into. I will just tell you a quick personal story. We did pre-interviews for some of these events. So we literally sat down with young people and had pre-screen opportunities to go through trying to get their interview skills up. Really quickly, one young woman who I sat down with, first question out of my mouth was mock interview. So this is a mock interview. I said, tell me a little bit about yourself. And she looked at me and she said, could you ask me another question? And I said, what do you mean, could I ask you another question? It's kind of a basic interview question. And she said, I'm really not prepared to answer that question. I'd like for you to ask me a different question. And we took, I called timeout at that point. I said, timeout, listen, you have to be able to answer that question in a mock interview. And we talked about her and who she was and tried to get her 3-minute pitch. Turned out she was fantastic. But then I looked at her resume, and none of these items were on her resume. None of the great things about her. 3.9 GPA, had done all these fantastic things. And I say that because this population is replete with young people who haven't had the advantage of somebody in their household to tell them how to navigate through an interview. What kinds of things do you put on your resume? And what do you wear? So we had JCPenney and others doing dress workshops for the young people at these fairs, just so that they would understand. One young man was in the restroom. One of our executives walked in. He was crying. He was crying. He said, why are you crying? He said, because I don't have a tie. I don't know how to tie my tie. He said, I don't know how to do that. And I mean, things that you just wouldn't imagine. But the skills, the ability, what they've overcome, what they can contribute to our businesses, is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's what we're tapping into.
The passion as well, just to see, I mean, both in Chicago and Phoenix, they came through that door with more enthusiasm than I had ever seen. When they were leaving the interview rooms, and for those who were offered jobs on the spot, they were ecstatic. They were screaming. They were jumping for joy. They were calling their friends and their family and saying, "Oh my God, I got a job." So there really wasn't a dry eye in the house, I think, for many of the participating organizations. Looking over at the LinkedIn area and having these youth discover what LinkedIn was. This is, I mean, it was huge. You can actually connect, you know, it's a different type of social networking, but it's actually going to bring value to who I am and where I can go. And so the experience, I just a couple stories, is not only the kids coming through and were they exceptional, and when you actually sat down and listened to them and heard them and they got to talk about themselves, which is very difficult for them, it's sort of a breakthrough. But some of them came in with their guardians and their parents and others, you know, all dressed up and saying, you know, "Hey, I want you to help my son get a job," or I get really emotional with it. You know, or actually those parents needing access to jobs as well, because you can't just help the kids if you want to help a family and a community. But we do have to start somewhere. We can't boil the ocean, but who are we to turn them down, and just to make those connections? So there's so much value to the community. And I just want to add to what Blair has said. It's also the public sector too. I mean, we're having the local government there supporting this and seeing what value that these small businesses, we have franchisees all over the country who are hiring people and employing them and working with local government. And that's a very important connection, as well as bringing nonprofit, bringing public sector, and bringing corporations together. We're all real people when we all care. You know, it's our communities, it's our country.
It's fascinating, as you talk about, one of the things I've seen in my career is that our most successful people were those who really dealt with adversity. And when change came up, they were ready for it because they had lived through so much change. And it sounds like this population, the opportunity population, veterans, people with disabilities, fall into those camps and often overlooked by employers as we go through. Now, the other very exciting part of this, not only really helping opportunities for young people, is that your companies that in some levels are competitors. You are working together. You're collaborating on this with another 30-plus companies. How does that work? How is that going? And how important is that to the success of this endeavor?
I think it's vital. I think there are scant examples of corporations working together this way to solve major social issues, but I think it is the model of the 21st century. So we have Hilton and Hyatt. We have CVS and Walgreens. You know, Taco Bell, arm's length competitor. McDonald's is a very close. We called up McDonald's and asked them to join the coalition. Caribou Coffee's coming into the coalition. I mean, this is a Big Ten approach, and the idea is it's going to take the entire power and weight of the corporate sector to even begin to make a dent in the 5.6 million opportunity youth issue. And not to mention if we try to do something globally, right, which many of these companies are international in their footprint. And so this is I think, I think we're actually living through one of the most vital points in the nation's history right now. And I say that because we have an opportunity where corporate America is awakening to the challenges that the nation faces, and is doing, both from a philanthropic side and from a self-interest side, is awakening to the need for corporate America to get involved. That represents an opportunity for everybody in the nonprofit sector to work as collaboratively as we can. And by the way, the corporate sector hasn't done a very good job of engaging the nonprofit sector, and the nonprofit sector hasn't done a very good job of engaging the corporate sector, in my opinion, as somebody who's lived on both sides of those things. But this is the moment, and there's a sense of urgency, because if we don't do it now, the window may close.
The window's going to close. That's great. Any final comments and thoughts here? I mean, great thoughts from the group. A terrific effort has come together. The notion, the power of collaboration. But on this event or other activities that you guys are engaged on?
Just again, in the spirit of us talking about partnerships and collaboration, is we actually do have to look at humanity overall. If you know, there were some folks who came to visit us at Taco Bell and said, "Oh, explain what you're doing with sustainability." I said, well, the way we define sustainability at Taco Bell is that we get to stay in business. That's it. We get to stay in business because we're taking care of our communities, we're taking care of our employees, we're working with our franchisees. And so if we can make this conversation more accessible, connect each other, and really look to link arms, we can still be competitive and differentiating. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
One other just closing thought, and I think it's really important to stress this, because a lot of people say, hey, these are entry-level jobs, you know, maybe it's not the best way to engage young people. I want to just refute that, and I will tell you almost every successful executive that I know started in an entry-level job. And we have to start telling our young people that these entry-level jobs are a pathway to success. And if you think someone's going to knock on the door when you're sitting on the sofa and say, come on down and be the CEO, that's not going to happen, right? So they have to start somewhere. These jobs are great experiences to learn customer service, to learn how to run a business at an entry level, to learn managing different kinds of aspects of operations. And we believe we're creating a pathway through companies like Taco Bell, Starbucks, and many others. And then we are also trying to engage the next level of companies so that if somebody comes through a Starbucks or comes through a Taco Bell and they need to get to a mid-tier level job, we'll have another company that's ready for them to be able to engage, even in the technology sector as an example. So we're looking at that as well.
Blair, Amy, thank you so much. Thank you.